Hey all, it's Colby or Rice, and I am back again with another weekly creative update. And I am in a fantastic mood. I feel like I'm having a lot more of these sort of wonderful, upbeat podcasts lately, and that's probably because it's still at the very beginning of the semester. Just wait until like after spring break. Hopefully, I will still be just as upbeat, just as excited. But this week is actually kind of crazy for me because I have literally four projects due, one of which I just knocked out the box today, and it went really well, so I'm excited. But yeah, grad school is in full swing. This is week number 4. So I have an extra credit paper due tomorrow. I have 50 papers to grade by Wednesday. I have another 150 different assignments to grade within the next couple of weeks. Plus, I have an entire class to teach on Gothic architecture on Thursday, which, I'm like brand new to the field of architecture altogether, much less me knowing anything about Gothic architecture. But as I started the project early, I know more about it now than I did before, and hopefully that would just go fine. I'm crossing my fingers that I don't screw up Gothic architecture, but it is really interesting and cool. So I'm really happy about that. And then I have a paper due on Friday, and then I have literally another paper due on Monday, as like a follow up to my Gothic architecture. I can't even say it right. I'm so crazy. As a follow up to my Gothic architecture presentation, I have to write a paper on it, a pretty short one. But essentially, pretty much from like today all the way up until next Tuesday, my week is insane. And that's pretty much how my semester is set up, with weeks going by like pretty steadily, but then literally like they get scrunched up and all together. So anyway, this is just basically how I set up my entire semester, because I know that for us after spring break, and I'll talk to you guys more about this later in the podcast, but we have an entire production coming up that is a devised production. And so that is definitely going to be a stressful 5 weeks, because we only have 5 weeks to put together the production and to rehearse and to get everything together and on point. And I'll also be bringing my daughter into rehearsals, because like that's just how I have to roll as a single mom. And it's just going to be insane after spring break. So literally I'm going to be crazy with graduate school pretty much until like April 22nd, and then everything will like hopefully just calm down from there. So it's a crazy semester. But this week's episode is entitled King Arthur, Blackface, and Reclaiming My Culture. And I know for some of you who are on this journey, this epic, fantastical journey of a Black female sci-fi writer, listening to podcast after podcast of, with topics dealing with race, sex, class, gender, culture. For some of you following this, you might not get it or understand. So I hope that by listening to my journey, specifically through the eyes of, and you're looking at it specifically through the eyes of a Black female sci-fi writer, and more broadly, you're looking through my journey as a Black female artist. Hopefully, you'll start to understand a little bit more about the experiences of Black people in creative fields. And so this particular week was a very interesting week with regard to not just my art and creativity, but also with race issues and whatnot. And I have a very interesting update to the Martin Luther King Jr. Day performance that I produced and directed just a few weeks ago. And if you guys have been following the past few podcasts, you will know that there has been an interesting saga that has been happening with regard to how the segment that I produced someone was trying to sort of control it, how it looked, how it unfolded. And I literally have the final chapter in that saga ready to tell you guys. And you will not believe what this final chapter looks and sounds like, okay? So we will get into all of the tea in just a minute. But this is episode number 57, and yay, we're steadily heading towards 60 episodes, which is really great and really fun and really exciting. But as you guys know, I start off first with just giving you an overview of the creative things and milestones that I've achieved over the past week, and then I get into sort of the meaty, emotional, philosophical lessons learned portion of the podcast in the second half. So I'm going to try to actually make this as short as I possibly can, because there isn't too much to report on either side of the fence. So let's just jump into it. First and foremost, New Adult Noir, as I've been telling you guys, is getting slowed down. It's still slowed down. However, we still have our January dark and gritty selections in sci-fi fantasy horror and in sci-fi fantasy horror romance available at newadultnoir.com. That's NEWADULTNOIR.com. So if you're looking for an introduction to some amazing dark and gritty authors who write in the genres that you love, definitely go to our blog, check those out, download them. Just click on the free books tab and it'll take you right to the page. Again, New Adult Noir is still in process of being rebooted, revamped, and repurposed to fit more comfortably into my brand as an author. Again, just to recap super quickly, as you guys know, New Adult Noir had a really wonderful, very successful 4-figure year last year. So we were successful relatively well. We did relatively well in the financial category, but we also did extremely well in terms of expanding our readership and our reach. And so I have been really considering where New Adult Noir is going to be going in 2018. And I realized that because I am only one person, and I'm still in the process of hiring and getting together my virtual assistants or whatever, I wanted to scale New Adult Noir back and focus a little bit more on producing intellectual properties, writing and publishing more novels, working on the film script and the film for Sandman, which is my debut horror film that I would like to shoot sometime very, 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 very soon. I also have been very focused on starting to take some more classes and study more closely the art of TV writing and TV producing in terms of TV filmmaking, producing, marketing, distribution, and selling on an independent level. So, a major focus in my personal career has been to shadow write and to shadow develop a lot of these intellectual properties, not just in the novel media or mediums, but also in the feature film and TV mediums. And so in order to focus on intellectual property development, I have to pull back on certain things. And New Adult Noir is one of those things. So I'm going to be launching some giveaways. Yes, definitely doing author promotions, like specific author promotions. And I will be trying to also post a little bit more frequently on the blog. It depends on how quickly I can read and get through books. But New Adult Noir is going to proceed at a pace that is more conducive to my schedule as opposed to it being a service-oriented business. So I consider the blog, again, to be an extension of the Colby R. Rice brand. It's not necessarily an entity to which I want to enslave myself. And it's not something that I want to be focused specifically on authors, but focused on readers and on sort of expanding my career personally, with the added benefit of working with more authors and helping them to grow their readerships. But I really want to create a very good balance between providing great giveaway opportunities that will be beneficial to authors and to readers, but not turning it into a service-based business where I'm focused on basically what other authors want and what kind of services they believe that they should get. I want to focus a little less on that and more on tailoring New Adult Noir to support my brand in conjunction with occasionally working with other authors, if that makes sense. So That is where New Adult Noir is going, but check out those dark and gritties. They're absolutely 100% free, and we will be expanding into audiobooks and audiobook promotion later in the year. So that's New Adult Noir. And let's see, what is next? Writing. My writing for the week, not as great as I would like it to be, although it's not bad. I think I averaged about 200 to 250 words a day. You know, it's not where I want to be, but it's better than nowhere. So in total, I wrote 1,556 words for Hollow Point. That is one good thing, is that I did focus my efforts this week on Hollow Point in terms of writing. In terms of world development and world building, again, the Asylum series has basically captured me and is like just sitting in my spirit, and I'm loving it. So I actually did a bunch of things for Asylum for the entire series this week, which includes plotting, specifically for book number 1, which is Sodom now. Asylum is book number 2. I did some more world building and like overall plotting for Asylum. And then I also prepared some more cover production specs, which I feel is important because I want to, towards the end of this year, towards the middle of this year, once I start like seeing that I'm making good progress on Asylum, I want to get my entire series of covers designed all at once. And I will be looking for a very special book cover author, because this particular series, I think, I love my current book cover designer, but I actually meant to say designer before, not author, but you know what I mean. I love my current book cover designer, but I want Asylum to have a very particular look. And I believe this look is sort of outside of the scope of my designer's current, current milieu or current repertoire. And I'm also thinking about doing an open call for cover submissions for Asylum through 99 Designs, where I would put up something like, $1,500 to $2,000 as like a price quote, and then I would get submissions of like an entire series of covers, and I would pick from those submissions. And then once we've decided that like I want to buy that particular designer's submissions, then the money would transfer to them and I would get the submission. So I'm thinking about doing that as well, but I do have some specific designers in mind, and it's just something I've been thinking about more and more as Asylum becomes more real in my consciousness. The only thing I've been lagging on really recently has been the Hitman of Happily Ever After series. Not that I haven't been thinking about it, but in terms of actual world building, all the sort of things that I'm trying to do with that series are still kind of in my head. And it's definitely something that I want to spend time on and put more time into. But I do also feel very good about the fact that I'm focusing specific kinds of energy on like one particular project. Like my writing energy is in my Hollow Point project, and my world building and plotting and character design energy is in my Asylum product. You know what I'm saying? So I guess I need to sort of figure out where the Hitman of Happily Ever After figures in there. And I actually might just start doing research for that series. I have a blurb pretty much for every single book that I've already decided I want to write for that series. So I know generally what the plot line is going to be for each book. But I do want to get a move on in terms of starting my development process for the Hitman of Happily Ever After. And I don't really even want to call it starting the process. The process has already been started. But in terms of just like pushing that process out of the gate. So then maybe I'll have those 3 projects in rotation, with Hitman being in the research phase, Asylum being in the research and world building and plotting phase, and then Hollow Point being in the writing phase. That feels really good to me without overloading me. Okay, so let's move forward. Directing and dramaturgy. Actually, I'm going to save that for last, because I do want to talk more about directing and dramaturgy with regard to the King Arthur show that we are producing at my university in my program. And I have a couple of thoughts on that. This is like the reclaiming my culture part that I was telling you guys about earlier. So we're going to move that to the end. And let's move on to The Bohemian Badass. The Bohemian Badass actually had a pretty good week, guys. I got a podcast up, even though it's like a backdated, back-posted podcast. So I recorded it a few days ago, but I back-posted it to January 3rd. And I still like basically owe you guys the entire month of January's podcast, but I'm like trying to, get it together. And then I actually also did a blog post. Yay to me. Those two things together probably took about 5 hours, 5 to 6 hours max. So now I sort of know how much time I need to put in for the Bohemian Badass. Let's actually up that to about 7 hours because I do also have to create for both the podcast and for the blog post, the graphics that go along with that. So if I want to post on the blog, I want to have a blog graphic that looks good, that represents what the post is about. But then I also need the graphics for Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, and Instagram. So that does take time. So it really helped me to understand how many hours per week I need to budget towards the Bohemian Badass. And so I can finally carve actual time out to do that. And right now I need like basically a whole work week to catch up with everything I need to do for the Bohemian Badass. But, I'm going to do what I can. Because as you guys know, this week for grad school is also really crazy. But yes, I did a podcast. I posted. So guys, go over to thebohemianbadass.com and check that out. I also started, like I had promised you, on the facelift for the Bohemian Badass. So I started adding things to the website, building up a sidebar, building up the homepage. I also invested in Elegant Themes, who they have amazing website themes, including Divi, which I'm super excited to get into. Divi is literally an amazing drag and drop, build your own website, but make it look gorgeous template that is available from Elegant Themes. It is incredible, and every single amazing website that I've seen from authors and infopreneurs uses Divi. Like all of them use Divi. So I'm super excited to get into that. Again, the Bohemian Badass facelift and update is an ongoing process that will take place throughout the entirety of the first quarter. So it's not something I'm trying to, get done overnight. I'm working on it a little bit at a time, and I feel very good with that pace. The blog post that I uploaded actually started off as a MailerLite tutorial for an author colleague of mine. But then I figured, okay, I just put together this amazing tour of the MailerLite dashboard and of how to navigate MailerLite, how to put together an email campaign. I gave a tour of like the different forms that you can put together on MailerLite, like all the features. And I'm just saying, it doesn't make any sense just to send this one author this tutorial, right? I mean, I might as well just turn it into a blog post that will help everybody. So that's what I did. And I'm super excited about that. Rebel Ragdoll, just in general, also had a really great week. I was able to make the kinds of business investments that I need to make for Rebel Ragdoll. I got Vellum finally, which I'm super excited about. I've always had Vellum under my belt, but in order to actually, you can use Vellum to your heart's content, but in order to create an actual paperback book or an ebook using the software, you then have to pay. So they let you play in it, but then when it's time to create the book itself, they're like, give us our money, which is what I did. So I invested in Vellum. I also invested in Dragon. Finally, I'm so excited, guys. Dragon, naturally speaking, is a dictation software that tons of novelists use to dictate their books into Scrivener, into Word, into whatever they use, so that they can turn, their speaking power into writing power. And that is essentially what I need in order to really get up the word count that I get to the word count that I want to get to while I'm also in graduate school. Honestly, I personally prefer to type my novels via keyboard. Speaking is great. I enjoy it. I can do it pretty well and I go really fast, but it actually takes a lot of energy out of me. And I'm not exactly sure how deeply I fall into the story when I'm speaking the story. I haven't tested it yet. So, that's going to be a challenge. It will be a learning curve. It will be a different way of writing, but I am looking forward to it because if I feel as though there are times I need to just be silent and fall into the story and just, be absorbed with the story and like the tactile sensation of touching a keyboard and typing, then I can do that. But if I just need to get words on a page and I only have 30 minutes to go before I have to do something else, then I love having Dragon as a wonderful partner in my writing process. So I am so excited. Dragon was ridiculously expensive because I'm a Mac user. I don't use PCs. I hate them. And as a result, I had to pay literally 2 times more, 3 times more for the Mac version of the Dragon software. For those of y'all who are listening from Nuance, that the company that makes Dragon, if you guys can get a coupon going or at least like a damn affiliate program going, I mean, holla at a sister, because, that was a grip. Y'all were really playing with the kid when you asked me to pay that much money, but I hope it's worth it. I hear some great things, and I will be telling you guys more about the process of using Dragon as well as I get to know the program better. So I'm super excited about that. I also invested in some equipment for my filmmaking, which will allow me to basically practice my editing skills, practice my audio mixing and music mixing skills. It will allow me to explore Adobe Premiere Pro more with more depth and at a greater length, because I'll have all of my equipment here in my little room office. And I'm super excited about that. And I'm just amped to be able to like finally bring all my creative tools into one place and practice and do what I have to do. Just generally, I worked on the business, just all the sort of infrastructural things that go into running a business, including budgeting, financing, production planning, excuse me, just figuring out what I need to do when, making sure that even, though it's January and we're actually close to the end of the month, which is crazy, okay? Just still making sure that all of my goals are relatively on track, and the things that I want to accomplish for 2018, to a certain extent, are either being worked on every day, every week, or just have been worked on, period. And I'm still pretty much on track, even though graduate school is walking its feet up and down my ass. A part of those goals for this year, moving from Rebel Ragdoll on to other things, is that I just finished an update of the paperback and ebook version of the first novel in my Books of Ezekiel series, The Given. So for a while, The Given has needed to be it needs to be updated. I mean, it's needed an update for a while. And finally I can do so, but I can give The Given a really beautiful, wonderful, gorgeous layout through Vellum. And now I can also format my own paperback books for The Given and The Taken in Vellum. If you guys know, my by looking at my franchise that I'm building, I only have a paperback version for The Given and The Taken Omnibus, which is called Ghosts of Koa. But I now want to get, more involved in creating paperbacks for every single one of the novels that I released. And The Given has just been done. At least the file of it is done. I'm probably gonna go back and refinish it, update it, add some things to it. But it was so simple and so easy through Vellum. I was just like, I could not be more pleased. It was amazing, and I really enjoyed that process. So Vellum is already paying for itself. Creative Uni this week was really great. Even though I had a lot going on, I still, again, try to do, even if I can't work specifically on a course outside of my graduate school program, I still try to do like some kind of passive learning. So, which I've also, just FYI, I've added like political learning into that as well, just by listening to news outlets, CNN. Not that I wasn't interested in those things before, but I have just become like insanely addicted to CNN for the past 2 months. And just even passively listening to it while I'm doing some kind of busy work is just really not only keeping me informed, obviously, but just giving me a whole bunch of ideas for my properties. And I'm not saying this like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that listening or watching the news could be fun. It's not that. It's just I relied on other outlets prior to give me my news. Like, I'll go on like my social media feeds and I'll see headlines and things like that, which are great. There's nothing wrong with that. But listening to actual like anchors and panels discuss issues is just helping me to get a whole bunch of different perspectives on issues that I just wasn't aware of. You guys know that I generally tend to be left of center. And so CNN pretty much kind of like stokes my fire in that regard. They're not really known for being the conservative outlet. But they do have conservative spokespeople on. And even though I don't necessarily agree with all the views that they espouse, I get to think about these things a lot differently. And it's just been very encouraging in a lot of ways to just know that in Washington on the Hill, issues, for example, like DACA and the Dreamer issue, are being worked on diligently and are cared about by both Democrats and Republicans. And this, if I wasn't paying attention to all the debates on CNN, I wouldn't be able to hear the nuances of both sides. So, guys, just FYI, like, there's nothing wrong. I'm not criticizing the way any of you guys get your news, and you could even criticize me for being a huge fan of CNN. But like getting your news headlines from just like a Twitter feed or Facebook feed or social media is a fine place to start, but I prefer to personally hear people duke it out so I can understand all sides of an issue. And it's just really helped me to think a little bit more practically and in a more balanced way about the politics going on in our country. And that's been really helpful. Although I do want to add other news outlets into my rotation. So, NPR, some of the British outlets, more international outlets, and then also adding, even some conservative outlets. Not because I really hold those beliefs, but because when you're talking to or listening to a conservative who does care about the country and who does believe that the country can make progress, but just believes in a different method than you do, it can really get you thinking. So long as that conservative doesn't espouse racist or classist or sexist views, I'm okay with that. And my original fear, again, with, consuming political news is that, like, I don't need any more negative reinforcement about who I am as a Black person, as a woman, just as a millennial. I just don't want to hear all that. I do want to hear sort of solutions that are grounded in constructive critique and critical thinking, and that are coming from a place of love. And if you're coming from a place of love, as far as I'm concerned, I'm open to hearing your perspective. Although I'm still going to be probably the raving liberal that I am, but I do like to be informed from both sides of the aisle, because we're all here in this country together, and we do need to create a nation that is, trying its best to meet everyone's needs and help people to be the best of themselves, no matter where you come from. So that was my whole little political spiel. Sorry about that. Did not mean to go on that tangent, but that was a part of my creative university, just coming to that conclusion and just sort of folding that into my understanding of how I am growing as a person. I also, of course, listen to my Happy Black Woman podcast. That's always a great thing to listen to. I also sat the 5 New Ways to Get Instagram Followers in 2018 course by Later, which is great because I really am trying to expand my horizons and focus a little bit more diligently on Instagram this year. Although, to be very honest with you, I will probably be focusing my virtual assistants efforts onto Instagram, because as much as I think Instagram is great and useful and like necessary to my business, I don't really want to spend time on social media like that. I really don't. I only want to use social media to connect with people, to share ideas, to share other people's wisdoms, and then to increase the impact and the breadth of my brand. But as for like enjoying reading tweets and retweeting, I don't enjoy that. That doesn't really stoke my fires. Creating things and producing things is what really gets my gears going. So to the future virtual assistant out there, just be prepared to handle the social media aspect of of the business, because I don't really want to do it. I also not only sat a masterclass at Screenwriting U called How to Create a Binge-Worthy TV Show, but I also invested in the entire 2-module course, and I am so excited. Now, mind you, I can't jump into it full force the way I want to in terms of focusing on the material, but I'm getting the lessons in my email box every single day and putting them in a very special folder, and I'm super excited because once the end of the semester comes in, I will have so much creative training to get to. It's going to be so fabulous. I'm going to be so excited. So many scripts to read, so many scripts to write, so many courses to take and work my scripts out through these courses. And I just added just yet another course to my repertoire, because you guys know that I do want to not only write, film, produce, market, and sell my own films, but I also want to do that for my own independent TV shows, all under the umbrella of Rebel Ragdoll Productions. And so all this ninja training I'm doing in TV writing, producing, film, screenwriting, producing, shooting, directing, these are all preparing me to become like the ultimate creative, directing, producing badass, so that I can start creating really top quality, amazing product independently under my own production company. So I'm super excited about that. I just feel like I'm on the right track, and it just makes me feel very good to be on the right track. I even feel that way with graduate school, even though this week is crazy and last week was kind of crazy. I'm loving the horror class that I'm teaching. I also taught an amazing, incredible Blackface lecture today. I thought it was amazing and incredible. My teacher may or may not think the same thing, but in my opinion, I felt very good and very confident about the material that I presented. And I think I gave the class a lot of like just great background and a great strong introduction into Blackface, while also tying the Blackface if you want to call it an art movement, I don't, but by tying the Blackface form into our discussions on melodrama in the class, that also helped to underscore the general sort of themes that we've been discussing in class. So I just feel very good. I prepared I really worked hard on my lecture, and teaching and leading a class is a skill that they're trying to instill in us this semester. And, I love to teach, but you guys know I do it in my own way through the Bohemian Badass and through the School for Creatives that I want to establish, that actually is already up, but I need to open. So I don't necessarily desire training in teaching, but it is helpful. And so I'm going to get some feedback on that. But I do want to talk a little bit about Blackface in just a minute after I'm done updating you guys. That lecture went really well. The one thing that I did not enjoy this week is that I read this play. I'm not going to blast it on here, but there was a play that I read that I really just, have you ever just started to consume something, whether that's like a play, a book, a meal, a movie, a theater piece, a performance, somebody's bullshit, whatever it is that is like entering any one of your 5 or 6 senses. Like, you're sitting there and you think, I don't like this, I don't enjoy this, this feels like a waste of time. This is sort of how I felt when I was reading this play. Even though as a dramaturg, I do try my very best to take a step back, acknowledge my own aesthetic, because I do have a particular aesthetic and things that I like and styles that I like. So I do acknowledge that. But I'm still able to determine the difference between my aesthetic and whether or not like a play is really doing much. And I just sort of read a play that wasn't really doing much for me. After discussing it with my class, I do believe I can appreciate the play a little more. But I think, if anything, reading this play that really annoyed me and pissed me off and didn't make much sense to me, it helped me to do two things. One, it did help me to look at the good sides of something that I didn't like, which is that I was able to pick out certain themes that I found very intriguing. Even if I didn't feel completely satisfied by how those themes played out, there were some intriguing themes that I think were significant and important. And the fact that I could see that really made me feel like, okay, like I'm not a total curmudgeon, and I can pick out, like, if there's like a basket of apples that's kind of rotten, I won't throw the whole basket away. I'll look for the shiny, good ones or whatever. That's one thing. The second thing is that it just only reinforced to me what my actual aesthetic is, and what I look for and what I personally like in a play. And the things that I like as a dramaturg are plays that have a very clear message, even if it's a message that I don't like, even if it's a message that I don't agree with, or a message that I don't even understand. But just like, I like plays that use their platform to say something, and I need that something to be very clear. For me, I don't think I do very well with ambiguity unless it's like beautifully executed. Like the ambiguity, for example, in Mr. Robot, where you don't know if that entire organization he's working with is a complete figment of his imagination or if it's real. That ambiguity is what keeps me at the edge of my seat. But, other kinds of ambiguity that seem to like make a play meander, not so much. I'm not really a huge fan of that. But that's just me. It also reinforced to me that I suppose I lean more towards a naturalist or realist perspective in playwriting and in theater. And for those of you who are not familiar with those terms, a naturalist perspective is like you're representing things on stage and in a play that are pretty much recognizable to similar events in real life, right? So that doesn't mean that a sci-fi play or a fantasy play can't be naturalist. What that means actually is that the play has a recognizable form, has a recognizable a plot structure, has characters who seem at least to have like an understandable or tangible objective, like just things that we can connect to a little bit more readily as human beings through our human experience. Like there are particular themes that that we deal with and we work with. A play that is not adhering to naturalism that essentially breaks all of the rules. And there's nothing wrong with breaking rules. I've read plays that have broken rules, and they are amazing, incredible plays. And then I've read plays that have broken rules, and I'm just sort of like, are you doing this to be edgy, or is there an intention here? But yet and still, I tend to, like latch on to, the more naturalist, quote unquote, realist style plays. And I feel kind of bad that I'm not as open to ambiguity and cray-crayness, but it's just not my aesthetic, and it sort of made me wonder if that is why I am more directly attracted to film and television than I am to playwriting. I enjoy playwriting, but I don't think I'll ever be like an amazing playwright. I feel like I can be an amazing screenwriter and an amazing TV writer or teleplay writer way before I'll ever be a great playwright. Because I think that what theater artists do very well that I still am struggling with is completely uprooting themselves from all of the rules of realism, which TV and film, no matter what genre it is, they do realism so well, and I just love it. I love a good plot. I love suspense. I love genre. I love action. I love, forbidden romance and star-crossed lovers. And, I just love genre, edge of my seat, grab me by the throat kind of stories. But these stories in their form don't necessarily break boundaries and break rules. But playwrights and theater artists are so amazing at doing that and completely disconnecting plot from form, from function. such that I'm still learning. I mean, maybe by the end of my career here, I'll have some grasp of how to do it. But I've seen some amazing stuff done on stage that could have never come from me. And so that's the sort of thing that I realize is that I have an aesthetic, and that's okay. I still feel I can tell a good play from a play that still needs work, but then I also would know, like, all right, this is not really my thing. But it's a great play, and let me pass it on to, for example, another colleague of mine who is all about things that don't make any sense to me. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like my taste is being developed, but also um, my dramaturgical ability to understand the strengths and the weaknesses of a play, which is, I guess, the most important thing at the end of the day. Okay, so that took longer than I expected, as usual. Oh my gosh, guys, I just need to get it together. Let's just get over the fact that, like, my podcasts are gonna be like an hour long, and I just need to get over it. Maybe you guys have already gotten over it, and you already realize that I'm never gonna record a short podcast. I'm still trying to make these short, and it's just like not working. Anyway, so with that, I'm going to turn more towards what's going on in graduate school, specific projects, and then, of course, the finale to the MLK Day saga. But before I do so, really quickly, I think it's important, again, to do like a self-care report. And, this is something that, like, I would encourage you guys to do too, as artists, as business people, as people who are working full-time, whatever you're doing. Just check in every week and just say, okay, these are the ways in which I took care of myself this week, and I'm just going to roll with that. Self-care this week was, again, on fleek. Getting great sleep. If I don't get great sleep, then I go out of my way to take an afternoon rest or a nap, like actual rest with actual, like, soft music, closing my eyes. Got to, like, really, like, get into the home cooking, which is good, trying my best to, like, lower my eating out habits. Definitely have to essentially renew my contract with myself every week on self-care. Just make sure to, like, do that. Just sit down and say, I had a good self-care week last week. Today, I renew my contract with myself to continue to take care of myself. That's it. If you have to do that every day, then do that every day. Listening to my body. I'm certainly just, like, even if I have tons of work to do, if I have to just go lay down because I've been staring at a computer screen all day, or, like, this light sometimes is, like, really irking me. Yesterday I had, like, the worst migraine, and I had this presentation due today, but I said, you know what, I can't. Like, I need to lay down, I need to relax. My body is telling me that you're about to, like, peter out. And so I just took a Tylenol and I went to bed. And that was the best thing I could have done, because I got up early, I finished it, and then I killed it today. But if I had pushed myself, who knows what would have happened. So just staying on top of that has been so helpful. My mood has improved exponentially. How I feel about myself inside and out has improved exponentially. And I also, like, make time to at least once a week hang out with my friends, or, like, one of my closest friends here. And then, like, I also get to, like, talk to my other friends who are not here, and my family, and then spending time with my daughter. Like, just those things that just keep me breathing and happy, and just feeding into positive relationships. So I try to do that every day. And by the way, the self-care journal is still coming. Okay, I have not forgotten about that. That's something I would like to work on. I can't do it this week, but I probably will be able to kick out the PDF draft of that next week. Like, I believe that will be during, no, not Valentine's week, the week before. And it'd be actually really great to get that self-care journal out on Valentine's Day, like, just to celebrate self-love. We'll see. But self-care is on point, and I'm going to try to help you guys get your self-care on point as well by getting that self-care journal out to you guys as soon as possible. Have not forgotten about that. Okay. Let's talk about directing and dramaturgy really quick, okay? With this King Arthur thing, y'all, they are about to be so mad at me. So mad because King Arthur's Round Table is about to be King Arthur's brown table, okay? Like, the Knights of the Round Table are about to be the Knights of the Brown Table, and y'all are just gonna have to deal with it. Sir Morian, the Green Knight, Sir Morian's mom, and pretty much like any other marginalized knight or story is basically going to be at Colby's brown table in this production. Actually, too, I'm trying to go to bat to have a sword fight. They're gonna be so mad. They already are looking at me like, Colby, come on, like, really, a sword fight? Ugh. I'm just like, listen, like I said last week on the podcast, if I'm gonna be, here at this program making so much money, and when I say so much, I do not mean a lot. I mean a little bit, this little bit of money, then I need to have fun. I need to, this is a devised piece. It's a devised piece of theater dealing with King Arthur's legends or whatever. That's great, but I can make decisions and be intentional with my devised theater, and I want to be intentional, okay, with the sword fight between Sir Morian and Lancelot, because that does happen in Sir Morian's particular storyline. So I'm interested in that. And I also would love to have Sir Morian's mom as like the storyteller in this devised piece. But instead of telling the story from like a book, she's telling the story from like a DJ turntable, right? Like, so literally she has like round tables, okay? Did you see the pun there? I saw the pun there. Round tables upon which she is mixing and remixing this sort of hip hop medieval music version of Sir Morian's story, okay? And I know that not everything with Black people needs to have hip hop in it, but I can't help it. I just can't. Like, that's just like a part of my culture and who I am. And even though Sir Morian is a Moor, I would love to have some interesting mix of like medieval Old English music with some Middle Eastern music that is like derived from Moorish culture mixed in with like some hip hop beats. And I want like a whole soundtrack. Like an entire freaking soundtrack. And that's what I'm going to be working on pretty much all semester if possible. I also might get my stepbrother who is very good with music production, and I might be able to slip him a little bit of money to pay him, out of my own pocket, of course, to pay him to help me create a medieval, Middle Eastern, Moorish hip-hop remix so Sir Morian could come out like a gangster doing his thing. I was also considering involving or folding in some dance into my piece. Not anything kind of like crazy, but whenever it comes to the Black cultural aesthetic, for me personally, music and dance is an inherent part of it. It doesn't mean we always have to be on stage shucking and jiving, but movement and the dramaturgy of the body, is so interesting and so important to me. And I feel like it needs to be explored a little bit more with the Black aesthetic. And one thing that I look forward to in the King Arthur production is figuring out not just Sir Morian's storyline and doing some interesting devised work around Sir Morian and his crew, and then the Green Knight, who has nothing to do with him but is still a fantastical, cool person of literal color, right? Looking at all those things is important, but I mean, more so just he's been erased, right? He's been erased in the entire lore of King Arthur and King Arthur's legends. So I can pretty much bring Sir Morian back and like adapt him into whatever version I like, and just have him being very pan-African in his presence. And like, who's gonna argue with me, and this is super important because I think it's important to reclaim in your own way your culture, especially when it's being erased consistently for mainstream culture and mainstream narrative. And me putting my own interpretation and my own mark onto Sir Morian is a reclamation of his character, his experience, his journey, and of like my culture. And it's like me standing up against erasure. And so I don't think it's a problem that I put, some, Eastern African blackness in him, acknowledging the fact that he also existed in this interesting medieval world, but then also injecting a little bit of Colby's soul into that. And my aesthetic is American black, and that's not to say that all of us love hip hop, but I enjoy it and I like the motion and emotion that it brings to a character, and specifically to the black aesthetic. So, those are my plans for King Arthur right now. I'm already being told that I need to calm down. And that this is not just your thing over here and then you're going to throw it into everybody else's thing. We're devising it, quote, together. And I'm just like, yeah, dude, I get all of that, and that's all great and good, but if we devise this together, there will be no blackness in this piece whatsoever, because I'm the only black dramaturg, so I have to bring that perspective, and I'm going to form my opinions prior and see how I can fold those experiences into the piece. And honestly, just theoretically and form-wise, there is something to, you can say something about Sir Morian's storyline looking super different from everybody else's, because he has been consistently marginalized throughout the entire retelling of the King Arthur's legends and lore. So why does he suddenly have to fit in perfectly with this lore that has constantly erased him and whitewashed him and excluded him? Maybe it will say something really powerful if one part of the show is uniform and looks a certain way, and then you have Sir Morian just being uniquely himself, very black, right in the middle of it, being anachronistic as hell, and just being, just wonderfully popping off of this theater stage and off the theater page in a way that's obvious and sort of like not seamless. I think that says something really powerful about his trajectory and about the way that he's been treated in the lore altogether. So, I don't know. Anyway, like I just make theater very differently than my colleagues and than my supervisor, because I just feel like the theater is a place of possibility, and I want to explore the damn possibilities. Some people sort of treat this stage in our lives as MFA students in academia as like the end all and be all, and for me this is the place to go wild and crazy and to experiment and to use this as a training ground, because once I get out into the real world, if I start trying to work for other theaters that are not my theater, I'm not going to have the flexibility to do whatever it is I want to do. But right now I have the room to make mistakes, I have the room to do things wrong, I have the room to do things in a crazy, very uniquely Colby way, and I want to explore that. So I'm not here to poo-poo the event or to poo-poo the theater piece, because there's nothing to poo-poo. We're still putting it together, but I will let you guys know right now, I will be fighting for my vision of Morian's trajectory and journey. I will, even if I lose the fight, I will go down trying. So just stay tuned. Stay tuned for a hip hop, version of Morian, just giving you, all this sword fighting turning into a dance off kind of swag, like giving you Knights of the Round Table, like a round table, like literal round table DJ turntable type of swag. Like that's what I'm giving you and serving you with King Arthur's Morian story, and y'all are just going to like have to stay mad, because you can stay mad. I'm gonna be super amped and super excited. Having said all of that, let us bring to a close the saga of the MLK Jr. event, which is yet another sort of instance wherein your girl Colby did things her way and ended up pissing people off. Now, mind you, when I brought you guys into this the last time, I explained to you the entire process of putting together our particular segment for the show. how, the powers that be didn't necessarily seem to trust us, with the material, with the segment. How then the powers that be or that were then pleasantly, or I guess unpleasantly, surprised at the fact that the audience was completely and totally loving and feeling that segment. Okay. That same segment that was being doubted, that was trying to be controlled, was the most popular segment that was interrupted multiple times with applause from the audience. Okay, so we got amazing feedback from the audience, so much so that people after the fact were hunting me down on Facebook, telling me how amazing it was. People backstage were filming the piece and really feeling it. It was just great. It was just amazing and on point. And at first, I thought that these people who really wanted to get this on film were, the friends and the confederates of the two performers. And I asked them, hey, were those your people backstage filming you? And they were like, no, we don't know any of those people. All of our people were out, in the audience or whatever. So we had people from the performance who were performing with us who were feeling that spoken word piece so much that they came into the backstage area specifically to film that part, and they were just talking all throughout it, talking about how amazing it was and how much they loved it. And I was just like, yes. So I'm thinking that right after the fact, the powers that was so basically scared that we were gonna screw this up, I'm thinking that they had the shock of their lives. They were completely excited about how it turned out, that the audience was feeling it. And I don't just mean, the friends of my performers. I mean, like, most of the audience clapping and cheering or whatever. I'm thinking, this particular individual who, produced the event was going to pull me aside for a debrief, basically thanking me for helping to put this together. And I guess I was expecting like an apology. I mean, maybe not even an apology for like how this person was sort of acting, but just sort of like, oh, kudos to you. It turned out great. I'm super happy. I was nervous at first, but y'all really killed it. Because it did really well. Tell me why. That is not what happened at all, y'all. What happened actually was that this power that was, I'm just going to keep calling this person the power that was, actually said, I really wish you had told me about what the content of the piece was going to be. Because after the fact, one of the directors pulled me aside and said that we should start preparing to potentially get complaints from the audience about the content of the piece. And I was just like, wait, hold on. I'm still computing, like, okay, this is not the, apology or the backtracking and backpedaling that I was expecting. This was not the kudos and the congratulations I was expecting. This is this person still complaining about the event even after it was a hit. Let me just rewind and hear what this individual has to say about this. So I say, so what was wrong with the event where it was causing so much stress and drama for, the suits? And basically, the fact that the poetry directly addressed white liberalism, that it directly addressed the political climate in this country in a way that was not at all talking about holding hands and singing Kumbaya. That was a problem. There was, definitely some chanting in the middle of the poem, dealing with, no Trump, no KKK, no fascist USA. That was started by the child on stage, which was great. It was very powerful. But the producer wasn't a fan of it, and neither was at least one of the organizers of the event, who was afraid that the event had transformed from a celebration of MLK to like a political rally. And I'm just like, wait, hold on. Let's just backtrack a little bit, because our piece was not a political rally piece. That was just one line in an entire, 7 to 8 minutes of poetry. and you guys are tripping over the content. There wasn't any explicit content. There wasn't any cursing. There weren't any lewd references or inappropriate behavior. No, adult themes. It was just about the unbridled, raw, unadulterated truth about the Black situation and the situation of people of color and poor people in this country. It was pretty all encompassing. And that made the suits very nervous. And this really got me thinking, okay? Because eventually I did end up apologizing, not for the content of the event. Like, let's not get that twisted. I apologized to this one individual because I was concerned that my creative decisions were being reflected on him as the organizer of the event, and was putting him in an awkward position of having to defend us, when that was not the goal. The goal was not to get this individual in trouble at all. And I did advise him. I said, if the administration has any issues with the content of the piece, I really highly encourage you to refer them to me, and I will deal with them directly. I'm an adult. They will not be talking to my performers. They will be talking to me because I'm the producer and the director of the piece. And, I am the person that they discussed this with. But the only thing I did feel was, I did feel a little bad because this individual was put in the position of not having known exactly what the content of the piece was going to contain, and then having to explain to one of the directors that, like, okay, I wasn't aware of the content. I didn't know it was going to be this sort of, cut through, no BS, no holds barred type of thing. But, let's just be prepared to deal with any sort of backlash from the community, which they never got. They were just sort of making it a big deal of, amongst themselves about it. But it's interesting because this is a celebration of Martin Luther King Jr., who was African American fighting for civil rights. And essentially, in my opinion, this is not only a day for the country, but this is a day of not just celebration, but awareness and reflection for Black people. And you have a show full of Black bodies, but you don't then feel comfortable listening to the Black truth. And I'm sorry, you can't expect, after looking at everything in today's society and what's been going on recently in politics and in our culture, you can't look at us and say, well, all we want you to do is sing and dance and hold hands and tell us how great of a job we're doing as a country and sing Kumbaya and make all the white people feel comfortable. No, that's not what we're here for. We're here to tell the truth. When this racial situation and the cultural situation and the class and the social situation in this country improves, then we will go out on stage and sing Kumbaya and we shall overcome and all this whatever, But until then, we're going to speak our truths. One of my poets talked about Trump's shithole comments, a shithole country's comment. She also talked about how challenging it is to raise a child of color or a Black child in a country where the extrajudicial killings of Black men and women are being literally filmed and put on the internet and out for the public to see, and there is no justice for them because the murderers or the people who are pulling the triggers are cops. It's hard to erase your child and explain to them how we've come so far as a country, but that we're seeing some of the same tropes and situations reflected in our society today. And you can't use Black bodies and pimp Black bodies to sing songs on stage, to look good on stage, to deliver everything that the world needs on stage, to dance and step and stomp on stage. But then when it comes to us talking our truth, we don't get to say anything. That's the thing. Our piece was the most direct piece of all the pieces in the show. Everyone was sort of just dancing, very musical. There was a choir, there were 2 dance troupes, but nobody was directly addressing the audience or directly addressing the political climate. And they weren't directly addressing whether or not Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream has manifested. We were. And to us, that's important. And to me, and I'm going to say this as politely as I possibly can, but the request that was being made of me at that time to basically be seen and not heard is a very typical request that I tend to get from white liberals who feel as though they're doing as much as they can to advance the cause, but who don't ultimately want to hear the truth about where we are in the cause. And to me, that's just, if you're asking me to do that, that's just like basically another form of blackface. You're asking me to sing and dance in a way that makes you feel comfortable, in a way that makes you feel unchallenged, but you don't want to hear the truth coming out of my mouth. You don't want to acknowledge my pain, my suffering, my joy, my happiness as a human being. You just want us to sing and dance. And even though I don't think this individual is trying to come off that way, that's how I took it. You can't just populate a space with bodies and call it diversity. You have to consider diversity of perspective, opinion, and thought as well. If you can't deal with actual diversity as opposed to physical diversity, then you really need to reconsider what you're trying to do here. And, like, I just felt as though not everything that we do is about like attacking the system or attacking the white institution or whatever. It's not about that. But we're not going to sit and pretend as though things are going great and that there aren't some interesting and very compelling and also tragic things happening in this country that need to be addressed just to make you feel comfortable. We're not here to perpetuate comfort. We are here to make change. And that is the primary difference that I've seen between, people who are allies, who are not necessarily people of color, and the ways in which they want to make change and the ways in which they want to proceed, and people of color and black people and the ways that we want to make change and the ways that we want to proceed. There's a stark difference that I've noticed. I think allies, particularly white allies and people who would want to help, are more comfortable conversing with the institutions around us, whereas black people and people of color aim to dismantle and deconstruct and reconstruct the institutions around us. And that's, I think, inherent in how we are raised in this society, just culturally, because institutions are sort of built with the white, hetero, cisgendered male and occasionally female in mind. And so because institutions so often serve our white allies, even if they're pushing back against them, they are sort of loath to participate in the deconstruction of that institution because the institution has always been good to them. So they don't feel the need to completely tear it down. And they feel actually uncomfortable with tearing it down because then, like, what does that leave, for them? And that's not painting anybody as evil or as selfish or self-centered. It's just how it is, Whereas African Americans, people of color, the institutions are very rarely built in with us in mind. So in order for us to change them, usually there has to be a complete overhaul, rehaul, and reconstruction of it. So we're, in a lot of instances, not all instances, but in many instances, we are much more likely to challenge the institution than to sit and decide how we should play a role in the institution, especially if that role includes, watered down, more modernized versions of shucking and jiving and blackface. I'm not really here to feature that. And I in not so many words, explain that directly to this power that was just the differences in the ways in which white people approach black culture and black people approach black culture. I live this every single day, and I can't apologize for sitting in my truth, but sometimes our allies don't feel as comfortable straight shooting, and I do, and I don't care anymore about what people think. So that was a very and that was pretty much it. I mean, no one actually ever came up to these individuals, the power that was, and then the director that also was, and no one actually came up complaining about the content of our show. If anything, they've just been getting great feedback about the show. But the fact that, again, you have to ask yourself too, why is this individual, why do they feel the need to even tell me this if there was nothing to make of this whole situation and no one's complaining, why are you telling me this? Well, because control. Hashtag because control. Basically, as though this is supposed to serve as some sort of cautionary tale. And I believe that this cautionary tale was delivered with love and delivered with kindness and good intentions, but delivered from very much a place of academic privilege and white privilege. And it's not useful for me and what I need to do as an individual. I'm not here to prance around and hold hands and sing kumbaya unless the situation is genuinely calling for it. Then I will be grateful to do that and happy to do that. But in the meantime, I'm going to keep being me. I'm going to keep putting the Black truth out there, whether that truth is soft or hard, gentle or rough. That is how I'm rolling, and I'm not going to apologize for it. And I'm not going to ask any of my allies to apologize for their realness either. I would feel the same way if there was another person of color, or like even someone who identifies as white, who feels as though they have to speak their truth, even if it's a truth that rubs me the wrong way as a Black person. At the end of the day, at least you spoke your truth and you were honest and you were unadulterated about it. We have to live in our truth, y'all. We can do that while also being diplomatic and being kind and compassionate and coming from a place of love, but it needs to be the truth nonetheless. And some people don't want the truth, even if it's wrapped up in, a blanket of love, sealed with, some cordons of kisses and then literally postage stamped with tons of compassion. Like, they still can't handle the truth pill in the middle of the package, and you just have to keep it moving. So, an interesting end to the saga, and I think the thing that I took away from it is that I am proud of myself ultimately for being able to help shepherd these truths onto the stage. And I'm even more proud of myself that even though I was getting sort of a slap on the wrist in the aftermath, I still stood up and said, I am sorry that you were put in the middle of this, but I'm not apologizing for telling my truth. And I will continue to tell my truth. And thank you. And have a nice day. And that's pretty much how I'm going to roll, guys. I mean, I know I'm getting the reputation probably amongst you guys as a troublemaker. For some of you more angry trolls out there, you might think I'm a race baiter, but it's not that. It's just I feel as though who I am as a Black person, as a Black woman, my culture is beautiful. We're resilient, we're powerful, we're strong, and I'm going to keep pushing the Black aesthetic on stage. I'm going to keep putting it into the limelight. I'm going to keep uncovering, all of these hidden stories, and I'm going to keep fighting erasure. I'm going to keep telling the truth. I'm going to keep centering who I am and who my culture is. And there's nothing wrong with that. I enjoy putting my culture into conversation with other cultures and other people. And that's not going to stop just because some people are uncomfortable with that. So, I mean, that's just how it is. And if I can't do this in the art world, then literally all hope is lost. Literally all hope is lost. If I cannot do these things with my art, then I don't know where I would be able to do these things. So I'm just going to leave that with you guys. Again, keep strong, keep making your art, keep being badass, stay indie, because as long as you are indie, you do not ever have to compromise your position and your truth. As long as you own your own intellectual property, your own real estate, I'm talking about digital and creative real estate, as long as you have a corner of your world that is your own, then you don't have to kowtow to what anybody else feels is good or is comfortable. You get to do your own thing, and you get to make your mark on the world the way that you want to do it. So I leave you guys with that. I'm still doing great. I'm taking all of these lessons in stride, despite the fact that I'm pretty confident. I am trying to stay away from arrogance. Staying firm in your truth and being arrogant, it's a very thin line. I'm trying not to cross it. But I think at the end of the day, if nothing else, my colleagues respect me. And that's all that matters to me. Respect me and don't try to get in my way when I'm trying to make my awesome, very Black, very culturally relevant art. So I will see you guys next week with an update as to how this crazy week has gone, because this week is going to be cray cray, as I told you guys before. And, let me know how your week is going. So, stay in the loop. And I'll see you guys next time. Okay. Bye.